This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Arnie Sherman, happy Sunday.
Foggy day in Missoula town. You know, it's going to be foggy here until the first snow.
Why?
Foggy, smoggy, smoke from all the fires.
Smoke, got it, right.
I just try to make it sound more hip by saying foggy as opposed to coughing, tasting smoke in your mouth, you know, town on the river.
Exactly.
So today on the show, we're going to have Cris Jensen, who runs our airport, the terrific airport manager. We have a terrific airport here. But airports and air service and air travel and airlines are always a sore point of conversation with my friends and probably your friends as well. When we talk about it, nobody ever says, what a great airport, what a great airline. It's always, you can't imagine how long a delay, how bad, you know, the person sitting next to me was, how surly the flight. I mean, there's always bad news about the airlines. And I can't figure out why they can't put a game plan together to make the airlines better. If I was CEO of a major airline, there are like 3 or 4 things that I would do immediately to make airlines better.
What would that be?
I'd have the best. First, to be a dress code.
Right.
You ever get on the morning flight at 6:30? People come on with exactly what they were wearing when they went to bed the night before.
Bedhead plus.
Yeah, bedhead. I mean, people literally in underwear. I mean, the equivalent of whatever their sleepwear underwear is. Particularly if you fly in on the early flight from Vegas. People come on the plane, they look at, where did these people come from? Do they actually walk out of their house dressed like that and they're not embarrassed?
You're right.
So I would have a dress code. I remember when I first started flying, there was people wore suits and ties and got dressed up.
I always shower before I get on a flight. I like to shower before I get on a flight. That's the most important thing.
You know, secondly, my second rule would be neck pillows.
Okay, so neck pillows.
You're not going to get more. You're not going to get more room. You're not going to get more seats. You're not going to get more space.
Right.
So in the little teeny, cubby hole that you get on an airline, how about making it as comfortable as possible? I'd run the airline that gave out neck pillows to everybody. So at least you could rest your head somewhere, or you could do something with that.
Okay.
Number 3, air freshener.
Breath freshener.
I mean, there are people that don't. I've been on many flights. We fly a lot. I have 1.5 million miles on Delta, so I've flown a lot on Delta Airlines.
It never expires.
But people never shower.
Right.
I don't know what they think they're doing when they get on an 8-hour flight and decide, not to shower before they get on the flight. And then lastly, my last thing that I would do if I ran an airline, I would hire crew with personalities. Sometimes you're on a flight where they make jokes and kid around and you think it's kind of, schmaltzy, but it makes you feel a little bit nicer and better because you're going to be subjected to delays and your gate's not ready and your luggage isn't going to show up.
Try to ease the tension.
Yeah, by being nice.
Southwest does that nicely.
Right, yes, nicely. But most of the other airlines could care less whether you were alive or dead on the flight.
That's true.
Just leave them alone, let them do their thing, and maybe you'll hit the ground softly instead of hard.
Now my question is this, Arnie.
Right.
Those are 4 great ideas, by the way. Now I agree with you. All 4 of them are mandatory if you're going to get on a flight.
On Arnie's airline.
But then let's turn it around for a second. And let's turn it around for a second and think, what happens when you get to a venue, okay? And the first thing you're greeted with is somebody with a pair of rubber gloves and saying, put all your garbage onto a what do they call it?
I am not
a conveyor belt.
I am not as upset with the people that are doing the screening.
Yeah, but think about the
TSA means, as thousands standing around.
Right.
And in some airports there are a lot more. But I really, as I said, I've flown millions of miles. I don't have a problem with what they're doing.
Search.
Most, and particularly at our airport. Our airport's terrific. Chris runs an amazing operation at the airport.
I'd say Chris is in the room.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, but he does. And I'm not going to get anything special out of saying that.
Yeah,
but
what are you trying?
I've been in plenty of airports. I mean, the ones that I detest and hate to go near, Chicago, for example, is an airport that you don't want to show up within 2 hours of your flight in Chicago because you're going to be standing on a line that runs out the door.
ORD.
And I'm not a big fan of Atlanta. Every time I land in Atlanta, I'm at the end of one terminal, and I need to get to the end of 4 terminals later.
Well, you and I have a ton of questions, don't we?
But, the fact that you and I
yes.
live 6 minutes from the airport, it is not an exaggeration that if our flight leaves at 6 a.m., we're not out of the house, 5 o'clock, 5:10, and we have plenty of time.
At the earliest.
Yeah.
At the earliest.
We have plenty of time to get to the gate. Most people don't have that luxury and don't have as good an airport. So when Cris comes on, we're going to talk to him about, our airport, what's happening. There's expansion going on. We're getting close to maybe 1 million passengers a year coming through the airport. What's that going to do to our operation?
Sure.
And just the kind of questions that our listeners want to know on a show like, what do you know?
I love it, Arnie. It's going to be a great show. When we come back, we'll have Cris Jensen from the airport. This is What Do You Know, proudly presented by Dawn Maddox, Glacier Sotheby's International Realty. Back after this with Cris. All righty now. We are back with Cris Jensen. Arnie.
Cris, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good. For our listeners, Cris was born in the airline industry, literally, right? You came out of college and you went to work at Reno?
Well, I did. I went to work for the airport in Reno. Yeah.
And then you went to Elko,
yeah,
Nevada?
Nevada, both Nevada.
And you've been here, what, 12 years or so?
12 years today.
So
really? Happy
12 years
anniversary.
today. Thank
well,
you.
congratulations.
Yeah.
So putting this all together, that's over 25 years, right?
Yeah. Gosh, I must be old.
Yeah, you're not only old, but you never had another job, right? You've hung around airports. You're like Tom Hanks in that movie where he was in the airport and could never leave.
Well, yeah, it feels like that. I'll tell you.
Is it still interesting and exciting to you?
Yeah, I have yet to experience a dull day. In fact, we say all the time that we'd like to try a dull day just to see what it feels like. So every day is different and every day is exciting.
So tell me, give me a bit of the profile of how our airport here has changed over the last 12 years.
Well, I mean, just talk about in terms of passengers alone or in terms of air service alone. I mean, we've grown, the number of routes, the number of airlines, the number of passengers. All of that adds to stress and strain on the facilities. So I always tell people our biggest problems are too many people, too many cars, and too many airplanes, not enough money. So 3 out of 4 are pretty good.
Not bad,
all of those in the last 12 years.
So when you started, how many passengers did we have coming?
So when I started, we were about 270,000, and we'll be right about 400,000 this year.
Right, and that's coming and then going,
and then another 400,000. Yeah, so that's 400,000 flying out, 400,000 flying in.
That's a lot.
That's a lot
for a community our size.
We grew. I was reading some of the statistics. 9%. We were the fastest growing, or the airport in the state in 2016.
Wow.
Yeah, that's.
And why is that?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question.
I saw you running a crack operation.
We don't have a Big Sky Resort in Yellowstone.
No Yellowstone, no Big Sky. Part of it is we've had some success in gaining air service, and so Frontier, Allegiant, those types of carriers. Alaska's expanded, Delta's expanded. So just the access has caused people that might have gotten on the highway and driven some other place in the past to now stay home and fly. So that's helped us. Obviously, the economy has turned around, and that's helped us. So the population is doing better financially than they were a few years ago. So more of them are flying. Business continues to grow. The university, right now, if you look at our flights today, it's all firefighters. So a bad fire season is generating a lot of
traffic. I tell my friends who are not here in Missoula that while price may be a little bit of an issue, I can fly almost anywhere in the world I want to go in one stop from Missoula, Montana. It is true.
One stop, right? Because you go to Minneapolis
or
Seattle,
or Denver, and or
LA sometimes.
Well,
easily.
But I mean, you can almost always get a connection to Asia through Seattle.
You're right.
And we have tremendous service, and certainly one stop to almost anywhere in the United States. So that's pretty good for being able to live in a small community with a manageable airport with decent service, and as Cris will tell us more about, the more service we get and the more competition we have, particularly when you bring in Frontier and Allegiant, that helps bring the prices down for everybody, which is very important.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Competition is the key to our growth.
Right, sure.
And so we, that's something we're working on all the time. Brian Ellisted, who's our deputy director, we hired from the airline industry. He had experience in that world. He speaks the language. He has a lot of connections, and so he's been very effective in helping us get.
How did you recruit him?
We just put out an ad through industry, papers, basically, and we used I don't know if you want to call it a headhunter.
Sure.
Just like the university is using for a president of the university.
What a great partner for you to have.
Oh, absolutely.
That's great. I didn't even know that.
And a much nicer guy than I am.
He makes him speak all the time at the Destination Missoula.
I do. That's my,
Well,
put him out.
He's a good guy.
I tried to get him to come here today. And he wouldn't do.
He's a good guy, but Chris can hold his own for sure.
Absolutely.
So tell our listeners. So you got, for example, you got United flying to Denver, right? And they fly, and the price is pretty steep as a walk-on price.
Sure.
You start serving with Frontier. What happens to the price?
So competition is what happens, and of course the price comes down as soon as you introduce competition in the Denver, the Missoula Denver city pair. Denver starts to get cheaper. United will start pricing competitively to keep those people from walking over to the Frontier counter and getting on their airplanes, and so. That's why that competition is important.
Sure.
It helps keep those prices up.
Well, I've noticed, just because I'm a frequent flyer, and I find it extremely frustrating, and this is not in your bailiwick, so to speak, but it is in the airlines, that for the same flight on the same day, on the same airline, if you look at it on a Friday, Monday, or Sunday, the price will be substantially different.
Yeah, that's a true story. There's so many variables when it comes to flying. And in fact, Brian and I were just looking at airfare today because we're doing a trip to visit an airline that I won't mention. But we actually we were flying into Chicago, or that's where we're trying to get to. That's where our meeting is at. We actually found that we could fly to Milwaukee for half the price we could fly to Chicago.
Yeah.
Same airline.
Yeah.
Almost exact same distance, but the price varies.
Well, it all has to do with, I think, yield management and the competition.
Exactly.
I mean, I was looking at an Emirates flight out of New York to Europe, and a business class ticket, which usually doesn't fluctuate that much over a period of time. And I was tracking it for one particular day, and it went from 29 to 35 to 31 back to 29 in a 7-day period of time.
That's true.
And that's very unusual to see that kind in any industry, to see pricing, fluctuate by as much as 20% within a week for the same exact thing on the same exact the same exact company.
The nice thing is that the airlines and the search engines, the aggregators of different feeds, are making it a lot easier to shop for airfare because they're showing it to you in a variety of different formats.
You just go Google Flights and it shows you a whole month and shows you where they have made all that cheaper and it's made it easier.
Sure. Well, and because it does change so often, what I do is I use, through Travelocity, there's probably others that do it as well, but there's a fare tracker feature.
Right.
And you can tell it if this fare changes by $25 is what I have mine set at. And I put in, I have like 10 or 12 different city pairs that I'm interested in. If those fares change by more than $25, it sends me an alert, and so that's how I can keep track.
Right, if you have some flexibility, you can certainly do that.
Yep.
You mentioned earlier, we are growing substantially here. What is happening at the airport to accommodate this growing number of passengers?
Well, so a lot actually. So we're deep in the planning process for a brand new terminal. For those of Missoulians that have been around for a long time, they probably know the first terminal piece was built in about 1948 in its current location. There was Hale Field before the current airport location. It's been added to about 11 different times over the course of history. And so this time around, we're not adding to it again. We're not going to remodel it. We're actually going to basically build a new terminal in the footprint of the existing facility. So we'll have a little bit of a phasing plan where we'll knock down one wing of the building and then build up a new building in that space, and then we'll start working into the rest.
Right. So we have 6 gates now. Is that correct?
Well, we really have 3 jet bridge served gates, and we have 1 ground position with a couple others that we can squeeze in. So technically 4 gates, and we can park a few more if we have to squeeze.
And what's the new terminal going to be?
So the new one will have, it looks like right now, 5 jet bridge served gates with 3 or 4 ground.
So we'll double our capacity.
Yeah, we'll double.
And we need to, really.
We do. Today, right now, we overnight 7 airplanes. And so we're already beyond. So that means they fly in at 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and they turn around and go out the next morning. So they're parked. We have 7 airplanes parked on the ramp where we have basically 3 or 4 parking positions.
3 or 4 And so which flights are those?
So we have Atlanta. So these are summertime flights.
Okay,
so we have Salt Lake, 2 Denvers, Seattle, Atlanta, Minneapolis. I'm running out of fingers or whatever. let's see, who am I forgetting? I don't, but 7 total.
Is there anything to LA or PDX or Seattle?
Seattle, yeah, definitely Seattle. So 7 total. I'd have to sit down and look.
Well, the net effect of all this is the last 2 times I went, and this is in the last few weeks, I went to the airport to pick somebody up. They had arrived and they were texting me, and they couldn't get to a gate. The gate was full. Right. They were waiting for a gate here in Missoula.
That's
and that
the expansion.
A few years ago, that would never have been the case. You wouldn't be waiting for a gate.
And that's a daily occurrence now, is that we have airplanes sitting off the gate waiting for a parking position.
Wow.
And so...
like LaGuardia.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, actually.
No, that's not.
Yeah.
Last time I was in LaGuardia, the
river there.
The captain came on and said, "We're 29th for takeoff."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there waiting for 2 hours.
I will tell you this, but the airport, by and large, this airport, basically, he and I are from back east. The airport here is a breeze. I mean, this is genius to be able to go to the flight 45 minutes before the flight, go through security quickly, right? Get on the flight, and then you're home in 5 minutes.
It's one of the economic development selling points to anybody coming to the community who are used to going to a place where it's a 2.5-hour ordeal in the morning,
right?
To go to the airport. I tell people, because you have the same experience, this is the only airport in America I can get to without going through a stoplight.
Yeah, exactly. But, bringing up economic developments, you're working closely with the folks in the different groups around
like
town.
Missoula Economic Partnership.
We do,
and others.
Absolutely.
Tell us what you're working on with them.
Well, so a lot of that. So we do a lot of different things with them. Specifically in the world of air service, they're working to help us with a revenue guarantee program. So the world of air service recruitment has changed recently, say within the last 6 or 7 years, where airlines now ask communities, not airports, but communities, to help share the risk of new air service. And so what that requires is the communities basically provide a revenue guarantee, dollars, if you will, skin in the game.
So we're going to have a new service on American to, was it Dallas or Houston?
That's what we're hoping, Dallas, DFW.
And did we have to put up a revenue guarantee?
We will have to put up a revenue guarantee.
Roughly, if it's not a secret, how much would we have to put up?
It's not a secret. So we have a federal grant that was $600,000. And then we're looking at another roughly $600,000. So
you're going to have to offer American $1.2 million of combination to get them to land their plane here.
But it's against revenue. So
right.
Yes.
It's against revenue. So hopefully nothing really has to come out of our pocket. It's
exactly
right? That's the idea.
So you're exactly right. When American started service in Bozeman 2 years ago,
right.
They I think Bozeman ended up paying them they had a bigger revenue guarantee than what we have. They had about $1.6 million. I think in the first year they paid $9,000. So the idea is the service needs to make sense. So we don't go after service that's pie in the sky that's never going to make sense. So the idea is
we're not going to have a nonstop flight to Tahiti.
Well, I personally have been lobbying for that, but it's not looking good. So
unless we were the resident of the residents of some Sultan of Brunei or something, that he didn't care.
Well, as some of our listeners know, there's a nonstop flight seasonally from Bozeman to New York City because all of the folks who want to go ski at Big Sky are flying in from the east. We don't have the same attraction here to lure that kind of a flight.
As a testament to our air service here, flying back east from here is not bad at all.
No.
To get up in the morning at 5:30, be on the flight at 6:30, be in New York at 2 o'clock, you still have time for dinner.
Yeah, that's all you look for.
And a late lunch. You know that.
Yeah.
Well, and we are
right at the airport.
Just to be clear, we are chasing New York services.
That would be fantastic.
So, are we?
We are, yeah. We've been talking to both Delta and United about New York service. We think Atlanta is a good indicator that New York would probably do well. We have, for a community our size to have nonstop Atlanta service. So look at Spokane. They tried Atlanta service. It failed. We're fortunate that they tried it here, and it's been wildly successful.
Yeah,
so we think that's a good indicator that, some of those larger metropolitan areas might do well with nonstop service.
Well,
so we have been
a lot
working on
of
some New York
university people who travel internationally. So a nonstop flight to New York that would get you into Europe is
that's a great idea.
Is terrific.
Well, and I think the other part of that is
and you're thinking Newark as well. I mean, you won't care what are the metropolitan.
It could be JFK. It's going to depend on which airline ultimately flies the service. Likely as that'll determine which airport.
So United or Delta's JFK.
Yeah.
United.
Well, no, Delta also flies into
EWR.
Newark. Yeah. Delta flies into Newark.
They do, but not as whatever. Anyway, that's my old airport.
We're just trying to figure out which one we're going to use to go to Yankee game and Met games and Knicks
Giant games.
And the Giant games.
So wait, all right, Chris. So that's good. So we're trying to bring in some new routes.
Yeah.
So Dallas is being one of them. Hope maybe New York, right?
Yep. Definitely.
Anything else up on the horizon? No pun intended.
So
pun intended.
So the important thing for people to know is we're talking to airlines all the time, and we're talking to all airlines. So we meet with Southwest every year. Probably the most common question I get is, well, when is Southwest going to come? Well, the answer to the question is we don't know yet. But what we can tell you is we talk to them usually multiple times per year, but at least once per year. And they're very good about, taking our meetings.
Don't they want a certain amount of flights a day that they don't want just one in and out?
And that's the challenge. And likely if they were to go out of Missoula or Bozeman or Billings, they would likely want to go to Denver. And obviously we all have a lot of Denver service already today. So it's probably a little bit tough for us. But at the same time, I think there'll be a day in the future that you'll see Southwest in the state of Montana.
Yeah, I remember. Well, our service is good enough that I remember when lots of people used to talk about, I'm going to drive to Spokane and fly. They don't do that as much anymore.
They really don't.
No, I mean that's not that. I haven't heard anybody say they're going to do that.
Yeah.
One, it's not such a big price savings anymore because we have some low fare airlines coming in that drop the prices down.
Well, let's do a quick ID.
Sure.
Our guest is Cris Jensen from the airport,
director of the airport,
the director of Missoula International Airport. And we are proudly supported and sponsored by Don Maddox Glacier Sotheby's International Realty. Question for you, Chris. If I want to fly from, this is something that I saw, which was a price thing, because I'm trying to figure out how to get down to California.
Mm-hmm.
You can fly to Kalispell into Salt Lake to California for cheaper than Missoula, Salt Lake, California. Why is that?
So again, pricing is one of those things that's real. I always tell people that it's a dark room, balloons, and darts. The honest truth is that the airlines have a very complex revenue management system, and so it's a lot of times based on demand for a seat. And so there's different buckets of pricing in each airplane, and so typically because our load factors are so high and the demand is so strong in our market, all of those cheaper flights that you're looking for, Scott, are sold before you ever see them. But they haven't sold yet. There's not as strong of a demand in Kalispell, and so there's still some of those cheaper flights available.
I see.
At the end of the day, if you look at if every seat was empty on an airplane in Kalispell and on an airplane in Missoula, we probably have very similar pricing. But our pricing, we tend to sell out our seats much quicker than a Helena or a Kalispell.
And then what's left goes for a higher price.
And that's right. So the only thing that's left available for purchase is the high dollar ticket.
I see. Okay.
Let me ask you this. I notice as I drive by the airport every day that there's a lot, to me, and maybe I'm wrong, there seems to be a lot more private planes flying in. So what's going on in that area of the airport?
That is a good observation.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. There really is some growth there, and again, it's maybe anecdotal on my part, but a lot of it is the economy. I mean, the people that may have quit flying in the downturn 2008, 2009 timeframe are now flying again. Businesses and private individuals are doing better financially, and so they're spending more of their money on private aircraft travel. And I think as long as the economy stays strong, we'll continue to see that be an area of growth. It's the other part of it is probably that we are something of a vacation destination for people, and so we do end up with a lot of what we call heavy metal, but larger corporate type jets that are bringing people in to go to Paws Up or the ranch at Rock Creek or Triple Creek or wherever else they might be going.
I know. I just informally as I'm driving by, I keep there's in the last few weeks, which is right in the midst of the summer. Craze. There were seven or eight jets parked at the.
Well, there was a 737, private 737 on the east side of the airport.
Yes.
And is it still there?
It is. It's sitting there as we speak.
It's private?
It is.
It's amazing.
That's somebody that we all know and love in this community owns that airplane.
I see. Okay. Is that right? So that's heavy metal.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's normally that aircraft would be a 160 passenger airplane, and I think the way it's configured right now, it probably seats 12 or 15.
Ooh.
So it's an extravagant.
It's a very nice.
Okay, got it.
Airplane. Yes, I've been lucky enough to be on board, and it's pretty spectacular.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So what is going on? I mean, there's a lot of folks when we talked about this before you came on, who when you talk about flying, they have bad experiences. And there's obviously in the last few months, not because of lack of news, there's been, in other areas, they're having the stories of, people being tossed off of planes, a flight attendant, punching somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, is there something new going on, or are they just focusing on it more?
Yeah, I don't think there's any. Well, I think, there's more people getting on planes than there's ever been. So the stress on the system is greater than it's ever been. I think kind of the one you alluded to was the gentleman that was drug off the airplane by United Airlines. That airplane was oversold, of course, so there were more passengers than there were seats. And so the airline was trying to get a flight crew repositioned. And so they were trying to pull passengers off, and he had paid for his ticket and didn't want to leave. And I think there's more of that going on. There's more stress on the system today than there's ever been. And then I think in addition, flying has changed from when we all grew up. It used to be kind of a big deal, and you might go once a year.
And you got dressed up. It was a special thing.
It was a special event, and it's become very commonplace and more. And not to say anything bad about the bus system, but it's become more of a kind of a bus system experience and less of a special experience that it used to be when we were growing up.
Well, the other thing is that, like in the medical community and some other communities, they've unbundled a lot of service.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So the airlines now have Delta, basic economy, economy comfort, business, and even on some planes first. I mean, you could have 5 different classes of service.
That's exactly right.
You're
right.
If you're not in a good financial situation and you're getting basic economy, you really are getting basic. I mean, you don't get a seat assignment. You're last on the plane.
You cushion on the seat.
You won't have any room for your luggage. You're going to be in a middle seat. I mean, all the things that you hate the most, about flying is coming true.
Right.
Is the airline industry struggling that much, or they just figured out a way to make more money?
Yeah, they're not struggling. So traditionally the airline industry over the course of their existence has struggled. I think it was just recently that as an industry over that existence, they finally broke even or are on the positive side, on the black side of the ledger. But in the current environment, the airlines, for the most part, are very healthy right now. And a lot of it is due to the fact that they've unbundled and now charge for all of those, if you want air or if you want a cup of water or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, $1 billion from luggage, they figure out how to generate $1 billion.
Exactly, the baggage fees or the change fees. And so the airlines have become more profit motivated and less maybe, it used to be that they tried to manage the market share and sometimes at a loss. And nowadays they are very savvy about making sure that they're generating profit on every single item possible.
Is that right? So, in your estimation, based on your professional work, who's doing it better than others? Can you comment on that?
Well, I certainly have an opinion, and I'll tell you. Actually, my opinion is that Alaska Airlines is the best operation out there. That said, all airlines in the current environment have struggled a little bit. Their loads, the aircraft are being pushed to the limits sometimes, not safety-wise, but just in passenger-wise, and but I honestly think that Alaska does a really good job. Delta, I think, in the last few years has done a really good job.
Sure.
So and they have a much bigger fleet to manage and a much bigger route.
Bigger. Yeah. Absolutely. International.
But I think Alaska, I'm with you on Alaska too, because I feel like if there's anyone that could challenge Southwest in terms of that type of service, it's them.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think they do an exceptional job. And, Arnie had, before we went on air, kind of given me some of his priorities for what he would like in an airline. And I think there was at least a couple of them that Alaska, that Arnie had listed. I think that they actually do. They have good crews with a personality. They're friendly. They care. I think some of the things like that, they really do a good job. And you hear people talk about Southwest Airlines. Their product probably is nothing exceptional, but they care. That's kind of their motto, or that's they have a heart. And so their employees go out of their way to help you, and they've been given the power to do what's right. Instead of saying, "Hey, I'm sorry," the rules say I can't do that. They say, "I'm going to take care of you. We're going to make this right. We're going to help you."
Let's come back to Alaska for a second. Mm-hmm. They just merged with Virgin America, right? Which is going to give them a bigger footprint.
Correct.
It's going to make it a bigger company.
Yep.
Well, exponentially bigger. Because it was like the little guy buying the big guy, right?
Exactly.
So is that, you think that's going to change them, or is it just going to, make them, just a bigger, friendlier company.
It'll be interesting. So, the cultures of Virgin America and Alaska are different, but they're not all that different. So Virgin America was very unique. They had the mood lighting and the friendly crews. And
they had masseuses on some of their flights.
So they were a pretty
unique
pretty unique airline and had a pretty, I would say, dedicated following. And Alaska, I think, is in a different way, has a similar kind of a dedication. And so I think if there was ever an airline that it made sense to, or two airlines to merge, or let's say an airline to merge with Virgin America, probably Alaska was a good choice. I mean, their route systems are certainly complementary. Their fleets are different, so that's going to be interesting to watch and see how they merge those Airbuses with the 737s. But all in all, I'm hopeful that the cultures will only get stronger. They're already good. Both of them are good, and I think it'll get better.
Could that open up routes for us that we currently don't have? Like the San Francisco route?
It's possible. We're actually
Alaskan, which is, I think it's a strange name for a company that I use most of the time to fly to Hawaii.
Right, me too.
Right.
But I mean, you have the best connections out of Missoula to Hawaii on Alaskan.
Right.
Absolutely.
On Alaska Air.
Yeah.
But then with Virgin America being merged, right?
Right. They have other routes.
San Francisco, SFO is a big hub for them.
Yeah, it's one of their biggest, actually.
And
so that could be good for us.
And so you're right, and it could be. And so we have already started. One of the challenges that we've had with Alaska is they just didn't have a lot of real estate in markets that we wanted to go to. So L.A., San Francisco, San Jose.
Wow.
And now that they have Virgin, they've got that real estate. They have gate space and ticket counter space and things of that nature that allows them to have some growth. So in our conversations with Alaska Airlines, that's one of the things we've now brought up is, hey, what about some California service? What are the possibilities there? And so, I think they're still trying to work to merge the two companies and put everything together. But it's certainly possible in the future that could be something that we would see.
And we want Delta to have Seattle service, right? So that'll keep the
competition. Yep.
We need that competition. So this is crucial because that's good for you.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
So are we doing runway expansion as well?
No. So we're fortunate that our runway is basically big enough to accommodate anything that we might expect to see here. Up to a 747, we could handle that aircraft.
Wow.
And so we're not limited by the runway and taxiway system. Currently, what we're limited by is the terminal building. And a good example of that is Delta Airlines came to us 2 summers ago and said, we want to convert your Atlanta service from a 737-800 to a 757. So many more seats.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, we just didn't have the space to accommodate those passengers or to park that airplane. And so that's just a good example of, again, going back to the terminal where we aren't able to meet the demand today that's out there.
Cris, are there other airports? Well, first of all, talk to me a little bit about how are the airports organized? Is it a public, private? Tell us how it's organized.
Yeah, so we're a public agency, much like a city or a county. We say quasi-governmental. We have a board of governance. So I work for a board of directors. We have 7 directors plus 2 alternates. They're appointed by the county commission. But once they're appointed, we're essentially independent. So we don't go back to the county for any kind of approval of transactions or anything of that nature. Our board approves everything. They can serve 2 5-year terms, at which point they term out and they're replaced. And so we have a great dedicated group right now. They do an exceptional job. They care a lot. They pay a lot of attention, and they're some of the best bosses I've ever had.
That's great.
And they're doing my evaluation right now. So I
have a quick follow-up question. How about the other airports around the state? Are they organized in a similar fashion?
Yeah. So all of the commercial service airports in the state of Montana, with the exception of Billings, are operated like we are. They all have an airport authority board. Billings is actually operated by the city of Billings.
I see. And of those airports around the state, are there any airports that, from an expansion standpoint, who have done well in terms of expanding their footprint?
Yeah,
in your estimation.
I mean, I think a lot of them have done well. I think Bozeman is the one that everyone looks at. They just finished a new terminal building about 4 or 5 years ago. That's beautiful. Yeah. They have exceptional air service. They have an advantage that probably nobody else in the state has, and that's Yellowstone National Park and Big Sky. And so, their air traffic is not. It's not people in Bozeman necessarily locals that are flying out. It's all of the rest of the world that are coming in, and that's why they have such good air service.
Right.
But I think their management it does an exceptional job, and we bounce things off of each other all the time, and in fact we do that with a lot of the airports in Montana. So I would tell you that all of the airports I think are well run and do a good job. And if you were to compare the Montana airports to probably any other state, I think we do better. I think our management structure with the airport authorities makes us more nimble and able to react and
I'd say
do
I
things
agree
smartly.
I agree with that actually, because I flew out of GEG out of Spokane.
Yeah.
And I was confused. It was a confusing airport.
It is a confusing airport.
For a smaller city, it's only 300,000 city.
Right.
But I've flown into Great Falls. I've flown in and out of Helena. Much easier.
Yeah.
We're much easier.
Sure.
I think we're just able to be more responsive, and I think the airports, and I don't want to say anything bad about my friends in the industry because I have lots of them, but I think our airports are just a little more connected to the public.
Well, it's a smaller community. We know lots of if you walk out in the terminal, you're going to know a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And in a bigger airport, that's not the case.
And I will tell you, we make a point, and I would be willing to bet that all of my counterparts at the other Montana airports make a point of walking out in the terminal. I go out multiple times throughout the day just to talk to people and kind of see how their day is going, and try. I'll help them carry bags,
and that's
push
why
the wheelchair.
That's why you're a leader in your industry. But I have to ask you this,
Thanks.
Chris.
Arnie, can I ask him one other question related to what you just said? Which
No,
please,
go right ahead.
I want to know: is it hard to hire good people here in the community, either at the airport or at the carrier level?
So I would say at the carrier. Well, so there's a couple of different answers to that. Number one, we as the airport are in the business of ground handling, which is very unique in the airport world. So there's only 15 airports in the entire United States that actually also ground handle a couple of airlines. So we ground handle Frontier and Allegiant. So and I would tell you that we pay more than the other carriers because our goal is to get somebody good and then keep them. Mm-hmm. And we find that it costs us more money to pay minimum wage and then have to go out and hire 6 weeks later for the next person in line. And so I would say from the carrier perspective, it can be challenging. There are ways around it by just paying a better wage, and that's what we do.
One of the things we do.
From the airport perspective, so the administrative level, the operational level of the airport, because Missoula is such a desirable place, we typically get long lists of people whenever we have a job opening. We usually have a pretty good group to choose from because there are a lot of people that want to come to Missoula and live. And, I'm a good example of that.
Right.
My sister has lived in Kalispell for many years. We drove through Missoula, to go visit. And every time we drove through, we're like, wow, what a great place. Wouldn't it be cool to live here? And, 12 years ago, I was lucky enough to get the job.
Right. That leads me into my question, Chris. Did it start out when you were a small boy and you saw John Wayne and the High and the Mighty?
Yeah.
That you want. I mean, this is basically your whole your professional career.
You bet.
You went to school to study.
I did.
This.
I did.
You studied what? Aeronautics.
My actual degree is aviation business administration.
Right. So there is a degree in that specifically.
Yes.
Wow. So how did you? When did you decide this is what you wanted to do?
So I don't know if I can put my finger on a day. So my parents owned an airplane when I was little. I spent a lot of time as a kid at the airport. Even when we weren't flying, I spent a lot of time at the airport. I had the good fortune of living very close to the airport, and back in the day before 9/11 in Elko, we could just go out on the airport and touch airplanes and be around them. And be close to aviation. And so it was something that I was that little kid in Little League baseball that was always looking up and the ball rolled between my legs because I wasn't paying attention because an airplane flew over. And so I started flying my sophomore year in high school. Got my pilot's license, my private license when I was a junior in high school, and went on to get my commercial and instrument.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's always been something
in your blood.
And it was in my parents' blood, so I think that carried through to me, so I can't tell you exactly when it happened.
But it was just formative.
And maybe
you remember too when I was growing up, people used to drive specifically to the airport to park to watch planes land and take off out right near. LaGuardia was a good airport for that.
Yeah,
and we did that as a kid growing up. That was a very popular thing: is to go watch airplanes, sit there and watch. what's coming and going, and you could get close to it and smell it and feel it.
Do you still go to like the aviation shows and watch the Blue Angels and all of that?
Yeah, I was at the Reno Air Races last year, so I get to still go back there. I have friends obviously still at the airport there. There's not a cooler event, in my opinion, on the planet when it comes to aviation or even motorsports of any kind. It's hard to even describe. I mean, it's something you don't see it, you feel it. I mean, when those old airplanes go by, it's such a cool experience. And so, absolutely, I still get excited about all of that.
Well, one of the things, I don't know, have you seen Dunkirk, the movie yet?
I haven't, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, one of the things in Dunkirk I want to tell you, and our listeners would probably appreciate this, there's probably only 24 Spitfires left that are airworthy for use in a film. And all of the air battles that they show between Spitfires and Messerschmitts are not computer generated. They're all the real, actual.
Wow.
And they converted a Russian plane that looks a lot like a Spitfire. I'm not sure which one.
So that
had 2 seats in it. And they used, for the filming of the scenes in Dunkirk, they mounted a camera behind the pilot. So you were actually in the cockpit of a Spitfire.
Is that right?
In air battles, and it's just tremendous.
Well, I have been looking forward to
see it in IMAX in particular, because that's where you really get the full effect.
Can you see that here at the theater?
It's still in Missoula. So you see, it's the air battles are stunningly filmed.
Are you as fascinated with technology as I am with respect to flight trackers? And I sit out on my porch, and there's this thing called Flight Tracker. And I will watch a plane fly by in the distance, and I'm like, Kathy, that is from SeaTac.
That's DL-245. It's flying, into.
But the information, it's incredible how much information is out there.
No, so I say no, I'm not a techie. But I will tell you, by the nature of our industry, we use that same technology that you're talking about.
Right.
So in the middle of winter, when we're trying to determine when the next airplane is, when it's going to arrive, so that I know how much time we have to plow runways, we're looking at that same flight tracker.
And the same data?
And the same data, basically.
So it's public, it's available.
It is absolutely available. We use a lot of, there's a lot of ATC Live. There's a website you can go to where you can listen to all the communications between aircraft and the air traffic control
I love
system.
that.
Well, I find that's all of them.
We do use all of that.
Even though this Flight Aware, Flight Tracker, you go to the airline itself and look at flight status. They almost always have the same time, so they're using a central data point
database
where they're picking.
Well, Arnie, I look at it when I'm picking somebody up at the airport where we live, up on Butler Creek. I'm like, oh, it looks like it's just making a turn in. I'm like, I'm going to go to the airport,
right?
Because there's a little latency, but it's not much.
It's not bad. You're right.
So
so we do use a lot of that, and it's very helpful, and it's
good stuff. Listen, when we get back, we're going to finish up talking a little bit about technology. And we're going to have some final moments with Cris Jensen, director of Missoula International Airport. We'll be back after this. All righty, we are back with Cris Jensen. Arnie.
What's happening in the industry that's new and exciting? We've talked a lot about the problems and how to try to deal with the problems. I saw recently the new configuration for the Boeing 787, which is an exciting piece of equipment.
Yeah.
But what else is coming down the pike that you're excited about?
Gosh, that's probably there's a fairly long list of things. I think one that people could look at that I think it personally is very exciting is the potential for supersonic aircraft to provide passenger service again. There's a company out of Denver called Boom Aircraft. So terrible name, I personally think, but but their concept is that they'll have a supersonic passenger jet, I think, by 2020.
Which will fly from where? How fast?
It'll be well, it's 2+.
Wow.
Mach 2+, and it'll be JFK or New York, something. U.S. to Europe kind of stuff.
In an hour or 2 hours?
Yeah, a couple hours is what they're talking about. And so,
you know how that plane is going to be fueled?
How?
By people screaming.
So I hope not.
No. I mean, can you imagine? I flew, you may have too, but I flew the old Air France and
Concorde.
The Concorde, which was, Mach plus.
Yeah.
And it was 3 hours and 45 minutes from London to Manhattan on that thing.
Wow.
And it flew at 80,000 feet It hit Mach 1.5 or whatever. You touched the side of the plane and it was hot because it was.
Oh, seriously?
Oh yeah. It was
going so fast.
Little teeny porthole-sized windows in that thing. I had the chance to fly at one time. It was unbelievable.
And it's small though, right? The
78 seats.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it's
Not
small.
big.
It's like basically the same number of passengers that Horizon's turboprop carries.
Is that right?
You sat in a leather cockpit type seat. There wasn't a lot of room. But you got there in half the time. Yeah. I mean, that's what.
Well, what is the longest distance a commercial airliner flies right now?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I mean, probably in the 12, 13, 14 hours, maybe. I don't know.
Isn't it like to China? There's like something to China.
Well, I think there's also the Australia flight, which is a long one.
Sydney?
Yeah, New York to Sydney or something like that.
Does New York go directly to Sydney?
Well, LA does. I know LA has a nonstop.
I've done that flight.
Yeah, but there's some. I read somewhere it's New York to somewhere. That's the longest kind of flight.
It's long enough that it's longer than the flight crews are legally allowed to be in the cockpit.
So you have to bring two crews.
So they actually what they call heavy crew them. So they'll have a backup crew, a second crew, and they have sleeping compartments for those guys.
Wow.
And so they'll switch during the flight at some point because the flights are so long.
So your first exciting thing that we can look forward to are the Mach 2 supersonic plane. What else is happening that's interesting?
Well, I think satellite-based navigation, if we can ever fully get it integrated, is another thing that would be exciting and would radically change aviation. Today, a lot of our navigation is still ground-based,
right?
And so it's very, very inefficient, and we have minimum separations that are a little bit excessive. And so you look at some of the big airports and how aircraft are lined up trying to get in there, and
how many near misses there are.
Sure, and how many near misses. And so, satellite navigation gives us so much more precision and will allow for a much more efficient system. And I think so. There's a lot of excitement around satellite-based navigation.
The one thing I will never do is I've been reading about crewless airplanes. They've been just like with
a Google car.
Yeah, like the Google car, planes without crews.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ever getting on one of those.
No,
you're gonna have to, unless it's taking me to my funeral. I don't think I'm getting on a crewless plane.
Well, the thing that people may not know today is that the airplane basically has the capability to fly itself. The 787 can take off and land by itself. So, in a lot of cases, the flight crew's there as a backup, just in case.
Sort of like a train conductor.
They plug in. They just they plug in the coordinates.
It's all computerized. Yep, the routing is plugged in. There's a flight computer that puts in the elevation or the altitudes. It puts in the weight of the aircraft, how many passengers, how much fuel. It configures the throttles. It configures the braking system.
But what happens so the human factor of flying is the air traffic controllers, and you always read that, hey, there's fatigue, they don't have the systems, et cetera. What's happening on that? Well, I guess satellite's one of the big changes, but anything else?
Yeah, so there is actually. And in fact, in Missoula, we had the opportunity to install a system that was produced by NAV Canada, so the Canadian version of the FAA. That's called the Exceed system, and it's essentially a heads-up system for air traffic controllers. And so that system, unfortunately, the FAA is not allowing us to use it now. It has to be certified, so we're still waiting for that process. But basically today, if you were to go in an air traffic control tower, they're still using paper strips to track airplanes. And so
I've seen that. It's like 1940s.
And it really is. And so, the technology in the towers today is somewhat antiquated. And so there's a lot actually on the drawing board that'll change, the radar systems and the accuracy and the management of aircraft and the, tracking of flights and the approach procedures. There's a lot.
Cris, when you are flying and on a clear night, are you able to tell where you are based on the city and just the layout of the lights?
No, I mean,
Missoula,
sure.
You can tell.
I knew, generally speaking, if I was a good pilot, I could look down and go, I know that's Missoula or, Spokane or whatever.
Right.
Today, and back in the day, we were required as pilots, so we're talking 30 years ago when I started flying, to track yourself on an aeronautical chart wherever you were going. So I always had my finger on a chart, and I would move along the chart as I was moving through the air. And so I could look on that chart and look right and left.
And you'd see
where I was at. in today's world, we have GPS in the cockpit now, and so that GPS, of course, is tracking everything all the time. And if you ever got in trouble, you just push closest airport. It immediately gives you the heading. And
right. As opposed to the movie The Spirit of St. Louis, yelling out of the cockpit.
Exactly.
Where are you? Where is this?
Well, I'm fascinated when I fly east here, right? When we hit Cleveland and Chicago, I know when I'm on over Cleveland.
Right. Well, some of them you can tell just because you've flown over them a lot.
Right.
We have a terrific website for our airport.
We do.
It's so good that I don't look at the airlines anymore.
I go
directly to our site. So tell our listeners what we have on our website and how to find it.
So first of all, our web address is flymissoula.com. So it's an easy one to remember.
Yes.
And I really need to start by saying we have an exceptional staff so all of that website is built in-house by our staff. Tim Damrow and Dan Newman, Amanda Jacobson are responsible for the content on the website, and they update it all the time. In fact, if people put a comment on there, there's a place to make comments.
Right.
We typically respond back very quickly. So it has all sorts of information, everything from flight information right on the front page. So if you want to know what time a certain flight lands, when Grandma's going to get here.
It's right on the landing page. It tells you every.
It's mobile.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's mobile. We also have there's information about parking, which is an important thing for people. There's information about our terminal development plan, our master plan, kind of what's happening at the airport in terms of development, board members, staff, contact information, things of that nature. So
I love this. Arnie, you and I need to go to Portland for some dinner. It leaves at 6:41.
Yeah.
And it'll get in at 6:41.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
Yeah,
you can have two dinners. You can eat one before you leave and one when you land. Right. If people want to, how do they get a hold of you if they have some ideas or comments they want to make directly to you?
Absolutely. So again, my contact information is easy as well. My email address is cjensen, so C as in Chris, JENSEN @flymissoula.com. And I'm always happy to hear from people, good or bad. I mean, it's probably more important to hear the bad. And then my direct line to my desk is 406-532-8645. And we're always happy to have people call, ask us questions. That's part of our job as public servants, is to try to help people through their day, whatever it might be, whether they're looking for airline tickets or a lost bag or whatever the case may be.
Chris Jensen, you've been a great guest, and you run a hell of an airport. That's all I have to say.
I will just tell you that I don't. I have a great staff. They just let me hang out with them.
You and your staff run a top-notch Tier 1 airport, and we appreciate you joining us today and coming on and filling us in on what's happening in town here.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You take care.
Thanks, Chris. Arnie, I'll see you next Sunday.
See you next Sunday.
Bye. Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichman@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO.